and welcome to the first episode in our brand new series of Mind the Gap webinars, where we're going to continue to talk to business and thought leaders, but with a focus this year on closing the gaps which we've identified over the last couple of years through the COVID crisis, and really thinking about what's on the agenda for us as HR, finance professionals, and what are the things we need to be thinking about in the new year. So I'm Tom Holmes, founding director of Varan Performance, and we're a technology agnostic consultancy that supports businesses to solve their HR and finance problems and undertake digital transformation to that back office. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Amy Sowinska, who is the EMEA Regional Head of HR for News UK. And we're going to be exploring some critical areas that are top of the agenda for many business areas. So, morning, Amy. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, and welcome?
Morning, thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. I can tell you a bit about what I do. So as you've heard, you've read out quite a grand title there. What that means in practice is that I really am part of a team that helps supports across the whole of the EMEA region, with mainly focus on the UK and the Republic of Ireland. But as you've said there, News UK staff. So we've got about 3,000 staff in total, and my team are responsible for the shared service side. So we're based up in Peterborough in our shared service office here. Our flagship headquarters is down opposite the Shard in London, but we do have very nice offices in Peterborough as well. And within the team, we have all of the usual shared service functions. So we have onboarding, we have contracts, HR Hub, which is the first point of contact for all employee inquiries coming in. And then we also have some more specialist functions. So we have an HRIS team, we have an immigration team, and they do policy, and we do a lot of HR compliance as well. So in a nutshell, that is what I do.
Excellent. So welcome, Amy, and welcome everyone else who's joined us this morning. Please ask any questions on the Q&A box at the bottom, and I'll post those to Amy or ask Amy those questions as we go through. However, you're the first person, Amy, we've had from a news organisation and all that stuff. So what is it like working in News UK? What's the kind of culture like? I mean, we've all kind of seen TV shows and stuff like that about what it's like working in a news room and news environment. But what's it really like from an HR perspective? And what does it, what's it like working at News UK?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, just to give a bit of context, News UK is, I suppose, the umbrella brand for some of our fantastic media brands that we have. And by that, I mean, we've got the Sun, the Times, we've got the Sunday Times, TLS. So those are all of our newspapers, both print and digital. We also have our news printers who do a fantastic job of a nightly miracle of actually printing and distributing the paper countrywide. And then we also have broadcasting on radio, so Virgin and TalkSport and other fantastic radio stations. And our new and really exciting business venture that's coming out this year is Talk TV. So I'm sure that you've all heard that Piers will be joining us to be leading on that, Piers Morgan. So having said that, the culture from the newsrooms really does sort of infiltrate the rest of the business. So we are in HR, we are remote, we are in Peterborough, we are in shared services, which you may think would have quite a different culture, but actually we are still very fast paced. We need to meet the demands of of all of our workforce, which can be quite varied. We are a global business, we are dynamic, and we have really pretty much daily outputs and daily deadlines. So I would say that it's service delivery at the very highest level in HR.
I'm assuming that kind of patience is low for HR type activities slowing down the main business. So presumably you won't be, telling Piers that he hasn't got his full ID and all that stuff and giving him 6 calls from HR. Presumably you have to work at a completely different pace to get that stuff to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose that we've got to get the balance right there of making sure that as a business we're compliant. But as you say, we absolutely don't want to slow down any of doing the doing on the business side. So we make sure that I think HR can sometimes be a bit of a thankless task, and anyone in HR can probably relate to that. And it's almost no news is good news. So we make sure that we provide, sort of great services, great business processes. We try to understand the business. So even though we are in shared services, we work really closely with our HR business partnering team, who do a lot of work to bridge that gap with us, because they really understand that in their business areas, they're with their different business areas all the time, really understanding what their senior leadership teams are driving towards and what they want to achieve, and they can help translate that for us as well. So I think it's definitely some negotiation that has to happen sometimes when there's things, we don't want to cut any corners, and we absolutely don't. But as you say, we also want to make sure that no one is slowed down with our processes.
Absolutely, and you weren't always in Peterborough. I imagine that you moved to Peterborough, I think. Can you tell us a bit about that, Amy? So moving the team to a new location during COVID, right?
So it was slightly before. So you're absolutely right. Yeah. So we used to have an HR shared service about 5 years ago now, actually, that actually sat with our business partnering team in our office that's based in London. And so the business partnering team went from having their HR support person literally right next to them that they can turn and talk to and have a face-to-face conversation with, to that person being at the end of a phone, the end of an email, the end of a chat. And so it was a very different way of working for all of us to adjust to. So I think there as well, there's been a bit of getting used to it, a bit of an adjustment in ways of working. But I think that, as you mentioned there with COVID, it's really leveled the playing field for us, because whether you worked in the same office or not, with people, at least on the support service side, being moved to home working for certain periods of the year, we've all had the same methods of contact. And so I think that it's really actually developed those relationships between the HR business partnering team and the HR shared service team to work a lot closer together.
But Amy, that is a huge change. So you're describing a kind of business in which I imagine patience is short with delays and other things, particularly administrative delays. You're also describing an organisation where your HR support team was right next door to your HR business partners. So presumably demand comes in from one desk, HR business partner deals with it straight to the support service sitting right next to them. And you've taken that all away.
Yes, we did. Yes. We take it away. We took it. Well, we didn't take it away. I think that we just changed it. And yes. I think that it would be a real luxury in any organisation to have everyone sitting together right next to each other every day. And although I am a strong advocate of face-to-face relationships and absolutely believe that that's how you build great relationships, I'm also a very strong advocate for creating efficiencies, both within process and also within cost. And so I think that the move to having what's a remote team now in Peterborough is actually been a really good thing, because it means that you can take advantage of all of the digital technology and all the tools that we have to really drive those efficiencies. So they have actually the same, if not better, service, perhaps not face to face, but it has certainly been a really big success. And it's credited by the fact that we've moved from just servicing News UK to also servicing other companies in our region as well, sister companies in our region. So it has all been a big success, but I'm not trying to underestimate the benefits of face-to-face relationships. So I, as part of my role, still do travel to London. I meet with all of our stakeholders in London, great relationships with the business partnering team, our HRDs, our Chief People Officer, Sarah Gallo. So we have very, very close relationships, and they're absolutely built face-to-face as well as remotely.
Good. So it sounds like it's working quite well. It sounds like people are getting used to the new ways of working. Do you think that the increased acceptance of remote working and stuff like that from COVID made it easier to make that transition, or didn't really have much impact?
Oh, I think that it has made it easier for us. I know that I wouldn't say COVID in general has made many things easier, but I think that it has accelerated the pace of change for people's adjustment to working remotely, working with their colleagues remotely. And I think that it's meant that you've sort of had to get on with things and had to think about, like, for example, in in news we have, or in my team, we've had processes that are pretty much all digital, but then there's just one tiny part that has to be printed out, or one tiny bit that has to have a wet signature. And it's really made us focus in on those and, be quite honest with ourselves about where we could move things all digitally. And we have done, and we did that in the first few weeks of the first lockdown back in March 2020. So yeah, I think that it's absolutely forced the change, but I think it's been a good thing.
That's very interesting. So by bringing the team together and putting them in a location which is remote, you're being able to understand the processes better and deal with the pinch points, such as the wet signature, etc. I imagine that would have been very hard to do when everyone's embedded in the business with, inevitable inconsistencies of services, etc., from simply people being there and able to do different levels of service for each person.
Yeah, it is, and it's also preference as well. If something isn't broken, you don't necessarily need to fix it. So it did force us to have a look at what is broken, and as I've said, just fix it. So, and it's also people's preferences. Like, it's not just about the wet signature; it's about seeing somebody who you only see once a week to get that signature from, and taking the opportunity to have a chat with them about 5 different other things that you may not have otherwise had that opportunity to talk to them about. So you wouldn't necessarily think that that's a bad practice to have. So it's just making sure that we're looking at things a bit more holistically, I think.
So how do you maintain those relationships? So really sustain those relationships in, I guess, a double pressure. One is changing the way the team's organised and where it's located, and then the second is COVID and the restrictions of that. So how's your team been maintaining those relationships? What are the tips you've got, Amy, in this area?
So I'm quite obsessed with making sure that my team stay connected and stay strong and have those relationships. So we've been, when we went into COVID, we were doing daily calls at a team level, and we all talk to each other on some type of meeting or call each day, but we were actually having full team calls. And then those went down to a couple of times a week, and now we still meet weekly. We have a bi-weekly meet with the wider HR team. We actually call it our missions and munchies, where we discuss company goals, and we also take the opportunity to have some snacks, which is never a bad thing. And then we have, absolutely more purpose, more intentional sort of strategic days where we get the whole team together. It's usually on site, COVID allowing, and we get everyone in a room, and we do our strategy days in HR as well. And again, those are led by our CPO. So yeah, it's a real mix. It can even be something as simple as having a bake sale, or for charity, of course. So yeah, it's a real range of things. And I think that people have also had to find what works for them. Then we have people in the team who are very comfortable just dialing on and being on camera in front of 30 people, and we have other people in the team that just absolutely hate being on camera because that's their preference. And so we've really had to work together to understand how this can work for everyone, and making sure that individual needs are met as well.
Right, yeah, very interesting. So you're trying to mix up fun and different ways of maintaining that connection with all these different kind of events and stuff like that, and these regular drumbeat of meetings as well, Amy.
Yeah, because otherwise you could go, I could go a week without seeing somebody who I would have otherwise seen every day in the office, and slowly over time you see that actually you don't have the same level of connection with somebody that you may have had, and that might just be affecting you on a personal basis of, I don't know about what's going on in their lives as much. But it can also really affect you from a business perspective as well, if you don't have that relationship with somebody that you used to, that you could just call up and ask them about, a piece of work or a favor, or to jump on a meeting with you. So it's not just about making the relationships, it's about sustaining them.
So you've talked about the top talent in the newsroom and all that stuff, and we can understand that pressure, etc. But back in the HR function, what a lot of people are talking about skills shortages, difficulties of getting the right people, and I was wondering if whether you're experiencing that, and then how are you kind of trying to tackle that, Amy?
We are, yes. So we are experiencing such a boom within HR, particularly on the shared service side. And despite having a fantastic name and a great culture and great company benefits, it's still a struggle to attract great people. And one of the things that we don't do is compromise on who we recruit. So we will have a vacancy and keep recruiting until we find the absolute best person and the right person to come into the company. So yeah, having said that, it's been a struggle. I've certainly had a couple of vacancies in my team. I think that the shortage comes from perhaps people being a bit less comfortable with leaving an employer who they have that security with, just because COVID has brought so many worries and insecurities, and they can't be sure of, I suppose, that guaranteed employment if they go somewhere else and something goes wrong with that company. It's a bit of an unknown. And also, I think, with so much more flexibility from a lot of employers, it's a struggle to recruit locally. So we recruit, for example, our area is Cambridgeshire, so it's a pretty big area to recruit from, but people from Cambridgeshire can be working remotely with a company that was based in London or Manchester or Scotland, where they wouldn't have been able to do that before. And so we're certainly seeing a bit of a pinch in sort of fantastic candidates coming through.
Yes, because there's a overall demand increase, significant demand increase, I think, across all businesses because of the COVID crisis and the focus on HR matters. So we've got that demand thing. It's interesting that you limit yourself geographically to Cambridgeshire. Is that because people need to go into the office in shared service? Do they need to be? Do they need to be in the actual location? Is that the way you run it, Amy?
Yeah, so across news we do have a bit of a split. So we have some areas that and for a very few specific jobs that work totally remotely. As you can imagine, those are mainly in our technology department. And then we have the complete opposite of that, which is in broadcast and editorial and in our print sites, where our employees have to be in the on site to do their job. And then we have the majority of staff from the support functions and across some editorial functions actually working in a hybrid setup. We came out of a test and learn phase with hybrid working at the beginning of the year, where we'd been seeing, what works best for different departments. And of course, it's kind of up to the different area execs. But now we're looking at sort of 2-3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home. And we feel that as a company, that's a really good balance, because it gives people flexibility. It allows people to have that, I suppose, better work-life balance if they need to be home at 5 and not have that hours commute either way every day. But it also allows us to be in the office together. We do our best thinking together. We do and so I think I've said the word relationship far too many times on this podcast so far, but we love being together to build those relationships. And so we have that face-to-face office contact as well.
It's very interesting that you have said it frequently, the word relationship. It's clearly a key focus in News UK. It sounds like it's a kind of relationship type organisation where those close relationships are critical to getting the news out every day and for all those teams to operate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah, I was also interested that you said that the actual print team are employees of News UK. It's not outsourced or a third party or some factory. These guys and these teams are actually.
Yeah, we do have some third party workers as well, but yeah, they are part of the employee base, and arguably are some of our most important employees, with many long servers, absolute experts in what they do. We have 3 sites across the UK, all state-of-the-art print sites, and we get millions of papers out every week. So we absolutely have some fantastic employees across our print sites, and it's also worth shouting out to say that they have been in every single day, come rain or shine or COVID, and yeah, they've done a fantastic job of seeing us through these couple of years now that we've had of the pandemic.
It's also interesting, isn't it? Because I never think of News UK as being kind of a manufacturing industry, but actually that's quite a big pile of manufacturing going on just in time, really fast every day, and all within the organisation. That's fascinating.
It is, yeah. As I said, it's often referenced as the nightly miracle, and I've been lucky enough to visit one of our print sites at Broxbourne. It's a seriously sophisticated operation. Obviously, our owner Rupert Murdoch has invested heavily in our print sites, and although the focus is absolutely on digital, and we know that that's where we need to be as a business. There is, when no one's taking their foot off the pedal on print either, and it's quite a well-known saying in news that Rupert has ink running through his veins, and so I don't think our print sites are going anywhere anytime soon.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And presumably, actually being in control of that is critical to making sure that we all get our daily news. So it's, I mean, I think of News UK and other news organisations being kind of quite old-fashioned, maybe stuck in their ways, etc. But this is a major change you've already described. I mean, are there other things? So is there a D&I strategy, this kind of stuff? Is change occurring across the business?
It absolutely is. Yes, we've done a lot of work in the D&I area, and it's actually headed up within the HR team itself. So we have a diversity and inclusion team, and we roll out training on diversity and inclusion, on allyship, on how to make sure you're managing an inclusive team, and that's actually available for all staff at all sites on demand. We also have a number of D&I initiatives going on within our recruitment space, so bringing in talent at all levels and really giving opportunity to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. We've got a fantastic Kickstarter program bringing in graduates and school leavers, really fantastically qualified people, and who have all of the skills and the behaviours that you would want to hire into your business, but because they don't have that experience, they're not necessarily being given the chance that they need. So we bring them into the business, we give them 6 months, we give them mentorship, we give them loads of training and loads of opportunity, and the idea is that there is an occupational outcome for them at the end. So they're either hired by News UK, or we've put them in a really great position to move on to their next opportunity of employment. And then of course there's so much work in sort of employee benefits and support in terms of what we offer.
You're creating a journey for people to join, to allow you to broaden the base of people who you're able to attract to the business, and leading them to be able to go to a business which otherwise would be inaccessible to them, by the sound of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily always another business, but we have a real focus on finding them something within news. But yes, I mean, ultimately we're trying to set people up for the best start in their careers.
Now, people, I was doing a conference on D&I last week, and one of the comments which everyone was saying was that it does not work unless there's leadership from the top. So, is this supported by the leadership of the business, or is it seen as a kind of HR type thing? I mean, does it have sponsorship at the right levels?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that, actually. And the answer is yes. At News UK, we absolutely do. So we have Rebecca Brooks, who's our CEO, who couldn't be more supportive of our diversity and inclusion agenda. It's on her sort of, I suppose, initiative that we've set up the diversity board at News UK, and she's absolutely a champion of the work that board does. And then we have a very senior executive sponsorship as well in Dominic Harter, who's our Chief Commercial Officer, who sits on that diversity and inclusion board and works very, very closely with our diversity and inclusion team to ensure that it's not just lip service, that actually when we talk about having a 50-50 split in gender in our workforce, that we work towards getting there and we're funded towards making that goal happen. That when we talk about having a 80-20 split in different ethnicities in our business, that we actually make that happen as well. And as you say, it has that sponsorship from the top. The tone from the top at News UK is absolutely one of inclusiveness. That's
really interesting. I mean, that really is at the top, because those guys are newsroom focused, aren't they? People are going to listen to, presumably they're going to get this done as well, so that they're not the type of leadership who are talking about this. If they're taking it on for their personal objectives, then they're going to make it happen, right?
Yeah, they are, and it is something that is included in all of our executives' objectives as well. So it is absolutely taken very, very seriously. And it's funny what you say there about, they're going to make sure that it gets done, because news is very much like that. Once something has the focus and has the spotlight and has that sponsorship, you can guarantee it will get done.
Great. That's really interesting. And If I understand it, there's also a broader transformation program which is going on at the same time across the HR function. Can you tell us a bit about that, and I guess why you're doing it, but also where you are in that journey?
Yes, I can do. I'm not sure if we've probably needed that a good few hours to chat through properly, but I'll try and do it in a nutshell. So yeah, for the past couple of years we've had, and it really has been, you know, a team effort, not just with News UK, but with News Corp leading this, and 10 other business units that are our sister companies across the globe. We are moving to go onto a global system. We've chosen Workday as that system, and we're moving onto that system from various different other current systems. And so I said the word system there quite a bit, but it's actually a complete change in terms of how we work. So we've created regional hubs that will service each region. So we have, hence working and my job title being the EMEA region. And the idea is to get all employees across the globe onto one system with, as far as possible, standardized procedures, global procedures, as I spoke about at the top of the call, to create those efficiencies, both in pace and in cost as well.
And presumably not just efficiency, there's also consistency of experience, a top quality experience, but one which is consistent across all the entities.
It absolutely is, yes. And I suppose, you know, there's a lot more to that word of, you know, consistency, and what does that mean? You know, for example, you could take the example of branding. You know, does consistency mean that we all have a News Corp brand on our contracts, or does it mean that we all across the globe have the business unit brand on our contracts? So consistency is that you all get a brand, but is it the same brand? And so those are the type of conversations that we're making sure that we're having, and that we really get right, so that when we do go live with this change, which will be in 2022, so it's happening this year, is that we've put enough thought and enough consideration into it, and really kicked the tires to make sure that we end on a really fantastic change for us.
So you're not just banging it in, switching it on, taking all the standard processes, etc. You're really thinking about the impact for the business and planning for that, by the sound of it, Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as simple as making sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, payroll will work, but it's not as simple as making sure, you know, people get paid today what they get paid tomorrow. It's a really holistic change.
Because I imagine, you know, it's a substantial investment. It costs a lot. But however you do it, that kind of change is an expensive and big investment for the organisation. So doing all that planning work, getting all those consistency and understanding of the different processes and what, you know, policy decisions as well, by the sound of it, the branding questions, etc. Most of that is off-system design thinking about how the organisation is going to work in the future. And some of it is supported by the technology. So that's, you know, I think that's really interesting and refreshing to hear that you're addressing the whole thing and not just thinking about it as a technology upgrade, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can imagine, myself and the technology lead on this project are pretty much joined at the hip. and you know, it's a fantastic experience there, and really try to help each other. But more than that, it's not just, you know, HR and HR service center and tech coming together to deliver a project. We've engaged with so many different stakeholders and really tried to include subject matter experts from across all of the different areas that are touched by this project. And so nothing should be a surprise when we launch. And hopefully it will be a really good thing for employees and line managers and our business, which is of course are the people that we're trying to get it right for.
Yes, absolutely. Getting those people involved is not always an easy task, because it's, you know, sometimes those people the business end of people may feel this isn't critical to their kind of day job. So attracting them and getting their engagement, is that the hard thing, Amy, or how are you cracking that?
Yeah, but I mean, we've had to pull in a couple of favors to get people interested. But like I said, we've got a great HR business partnering team who we've been able to lean on to start to get the different stakeholders engaged from the business in the support services like tech, like finance, for example. As you can imagine, we work together very closely anyway. So that's probably been the easier side of things. But I think that, you know, there are lots of smart people at News, and people realise that it's not part of their day jobs, and they don't want to, when this change happens, they don't want it to get in the way of their day jobs. And for that to happen, we need to make sure that we get it right before it goes live. And so all of this planning and all of this work will actually help in the long term for those areas as well.
Right, so these guys have an opportunity to engage and remove the irritants and the complexities, the things which aren't great about HR, and you're giving them that chance. So by the business engaging, they can map out a future where they're getting exactly the service they want.
Yeah, I think that it's sort of twofold. One is absolutely that side, and the other side of it is where there are things that, you know, potentially will be irritant that can't change because, I don't know, that's a standard workday delivered function, for example. Then we are making sure that we're doing our part in making sure that we educate and inform, and it's not just a no, it's a we can't because, and approach it in that way.
Right, you're absolutely right. Often people think it's like magic. It's going to make everything, remove every single glitch or problem or step from a process. But that, it doesn't, you know, it's still technology supporting a business doing their services in a much slicker and better way. But there are still steps which need, you know, we still need to stick to a process, right?
You do, yes. Hopefully 99% of the glitches won't be there, but yes, absolutely, you still do need to follow a process. We still need to get the information from the people that have it in some way to make those changes happen.
Yes, yeah. So Amy, can you tell us what your top tips for business leaders who are thinking about, you know, we're all thinking about the future of work at the moment, but what are your thoughts from the perspective of News UK and your experience?
Yes, I can do. Top 3 tips. So I would say I hear quite a lot of, oh, we can't do this because, or this won't work. And I would just say try try something new and try and embrace that change, you know, because you might surprise yourself. And then I suppose in that same vein, I would say don't be afraid to fail. So that is absolutely, in, you know, my experience, where the best learning has come from. It's tough lessons, but it is absolutely what pushes you to do better next time, and that's where experience comes from as well. So don't be afraid to try new things, and don't be afraid to fail. And then I suppose the third tip would be more on the people side. So, you know, everyone is an individual. One size does not fit all. You're always going to try and plan for the 80% or the 90%, but just be alive to the fact that there will be that 20 or 10% that may not fit into what you've done. And so try to take everyone as an individual and accommodate where you can.
Interesting. It's what's interesting about those tips is that I can see that they are very much from the lens of the kind of organization you work for, and they're subtly different from what someone in your position would be from another organization. I mean, I love that can-do attitude as being the first one, and I imagine in the demanding environment of News UK, actually, that's critical. People saying, oh, I can't do that, or I don't have time, that presumably has short shrift.
Yeah, if you start with a concept, I'm not sure how far you'd get at News anyway, and you've got to be willing to at least try. And like I say, you can fail, but you do have to be willing and up to try.
Well, that is interesting. Your second point of not being afraid to fail, I would have thought that in that type of organization, that's quite a tough one. People are presumably scared of disappointing some of the senior stakeholders at times, etc. So how do you embed that one so that people, you know, genuinely are trying new things without that kind of concern that they may not be perfect first?
I think in in my team anyway, at least, we've really tried to develop a culture of learning. And so if there is a failure, for want of a better word, if something doesn't turn out exactly how we want it to, but actually even if something does turn out exactly how we want it to, then we do that review. We have a look at what worked really well. We have a look at what could have gone better. You hold our hands up and say, this actually went terribly wrong. And what have we learned from that? And that is always the question. What have we learned and what can we do better next time?
Right, so it's that ability of not being scared to fail, because actually creating a failure is a learning point. I guess people's patience with not learning from failures is really the crux of it. Yeah, and if you've got a culture which learns from mistakes, then everyone's very forgiving and excited about it. Actually,
exactly. Yeah,
brilliant. So I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today, Amy, and thank you for being here and sharing your insights, particularly in such an organisation where we think we know a lot about it, but actually you're describing something which is rapidly modernising, rapidly transforming, doing things and changes which kind of surprise me. And it sounds like it's really exciting. But do you love working there, Amy? Is it?
Hopefully it's come across during the call, but yeah, I do. I mean, I've been at News for 5.5 years now, and I can honestly say, hand on heart, every single day has been interesting. Every single day has been different. And yeah, and I suppose if you love that like I do, then it's absolutely the right company for you. And it's a really, really exciting place to be. It's high support and it's high challenge. And yes, I love it.
Oh, that's fantastic. A lot of people have fallen out of love with their workplaces during the COVID crisis, etc. And it's great to hear someone who's made lots of changes and still is in love with where they work. That's great. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our listeners who've taken the time to join us this morning. This episode will be made available on various podcast platforms in the future, so you can see them and review as needed. Spotify, Apple Podcast, and you can look up Mind the Gap and Varan on those platforms to see our publication. Next time, we're going to be talking to Pauline Caldwell to discuss the balance of power, looking at the future of professional services and organisations. So I'd like to thank you again, Amy, for your insights this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And thank all our audience for attending, and have a great rest of the day.